Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 38. Hear the word of the Lord. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Someone told me years ago that we should use things and love people, not the other way around. Unfortunately, that simple message seems hard for us to live up to. Why is prioritizing people over things so difficult to manage? Why is it easy for us to find so many different ways to excuse our failure to implement such a simple priority we can readily agree with at face value? The kernel of Jesus' teaching can be found in what we normally call the Sermon on the Mount. It's a bit of a misnomer, as Matthew and Luke disagree on where Jesus was. Then again, there is no reason to think Jesus preached this message only one time and only in one location. He most likely recycled at least parts of it, especially for different crowds who came to hear him at different places over 3 years of itinerant ministry. One year, while reporting on our mission work in 50 different churches, I cycled through 4 sermons. I figured I might have some of the same people listening that many times. One weekend, while speaking in 4 different churches, my guide was shocked to discover I had more than one sermon to preach. I didn't think that was anything special. I normally preach a different sermon every week. If you look back at all my sermons over a 30-year time frame, however, you'll find some repetition. You would find me repeating some of the same things in one sermon that I said in another, even preaching to the same group of people. Jesus was not so different in that regard. His disciples needed to hear some of the same things over and over and over again. As a mentor once told me, it's not important unless you've said it at least 3 times. This is no transcription of Jesus' exact words on one particular occasion. You've heard me say that before, I know. It's a summary of what Jesus would probably have said multiple times and likely in multiple ways. That's part of the reason why we have different versions of Jesus' parables in the Gospels. They were stories Jesus told more than once and used in different ways to respond to various issues. After all, you can read through the entire Gospel of Luke in about an hour. We would expect Jesus to have spent longer than that preaching on this occasion alone. This is a summary of Jesus' words, not just from that one particular day and one particular setting. It's from the course of Jesus' ministry. The Beatitudes we read from last Sunday function kind of like a preamble to the rest of this sermon. And this sermon is then the heart of Jesus' basic message. Love one another. No exceptions. Sure, Jesus will flesh that out differently with the story of the Good Samaritan. He will respond to it in action while talking with a woman at the well in Sychar. He will express it differently by touching people with leprosy, restoring sight to the blind, and returning a man's daughter to life. This summation of what Jesus had to say and do prepares us to see the good news in action over the course of the days, weeks, and years ahead. For now, Luke gives us an overview of the things Jesus will flesh out. It begins his message about loving people as our first and highest priority. This is the bottom line for all the rest. It's the summation of Jesus' teaching and encapsulation of God's will. We have spent way too much energy over the years attempting to reconstruct the precise words of Jesus as though that were the only way to present a gospel about him that would record him word for word. We kind of forget that Jesus most likely preached in Aramaic, not Greek. His father was a tekton, an unskilled day laborer, which meant Jesus most likely had only a rudimentary education, learning to read the Hebrew scriptures and speak Aramaic, the language of his time and place. Luke's record comes to us in translation and passed on from what others have reported to him, or what Luke may have read in accounts like Mark's. We don't need to determine Jesus' precise words, however, to understand the message clearly. Love one another. I had that one down from Vacation Bible School before I had begun to read. Then again, it was one of the Bible verses I learned that week right along with pick up your own toys. The message, however, is clear. It's consistent. We see it not only in Jesus' words, but also time and again in Jesus' actions. He tells us to love our enemies. Then he takes his journey through the middle of Samaria, while most Jews would have added a couple of days to a trip, simply to avoid contamination with those filthy, heathen foreigners. Not only does Jesus say, love your neighbor, he says, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. That's not likely to be the message I hear if I turn on what passes for Christian radio. I'll likely hear something more akin to stay away from those lousy sinners, or maybe you can't be friends with the world and still love Jesus. The problem is I can't really love people I don't know. I can't get past the enemy label without first humanizing the one I have labeled an enemy. I can't even have enemies once I start to love them. If I'm going to love others, I have to be willing to get to know them, to interact with them, to talk with them, to widen my circles of acquaintance, acceptance, friendship, and love. I have to get past otherizing people. I've told you about inviting someone to speak and everyone at church being on edge as a black man stepped up to the pulpit in an all-white congregation. Tensions were very high in the service that day as he stepped up to speak. By the next Sunday, I was hearing, "I saw Scotty this week." They had seen him every week for years. Until he was introduced to them, however, they had never acknowledged him. Without that first step, acknowledging someone, how could they ever learn to love him? If we look seriously at these words and take them to heart, we must move much deeper into this question of loving one another than we are wont to do. We have to dismiss the notion that we have enemies at all. If I'm going to love my enemies, I can't have enemies. If I'm going to love my neighbor as Jesus defines neighbor, everyone I encounter is a neighbor I am charged with loving, even if we have yet to meet. My problem is that when I head into town, I have an agenda. I have time constraints I place on my interactions with others. I have errands to accomplish. I have a grocery list or tasks I give precedence over anything else, including the people in my path. I don't see drivers on the road. I see cars in my way. I don't see people in grocery stores. I see obstacles to getting through the aisle ahead of me. I don't see folks cleaning the floor in front of me. I see a mop and a spot of wet flooring on which I might slip. I don't prioritize people. I prioritize my agenda, my time, the things I want to accomplish. The people are just furniture who get in my way. When will we learn to prioritize people as more than obstructions? If I see one of you in the store, suddenly my perception of the world shifts. Why should it? Shouldn't I be prioritizing people all along the way, regardless of the errands, time constraints, or tasks I allow to guide me? Sure, it might shock someone at Food Line if I actually spoke to them as a friend. I think we could work around any problem that might create. The question is whether their personhood and dignity is high enough in my priorities.